Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure why you are here. From what I can tell, this is less of a hearing of substance than it is a lobbying exercise in the middle of an internal battle between my Democrat colleagues. Should the blowout housing spending be included in President Biden's big government tax and spend socialism bill, or will it be left on the cutting room floor after the negotiations come to a conclusion? I think it's the latter, and I think we all know it. I think the fact that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema have made it clear that they're not interested in this, that this is an exercise in internal Democrat squabbling, and there's an effort to reduce the size and scope of this socialism package. And as a result of that, some of these housing priorities that the chairwoman is pushing are not going to make it into the final bill if there is a final bill. So why are we having a hearing? Why are we wasting members' time discussing this charade, monopolizing the time of our witnesses who would undoubtedly be able to participate in something more productive? You know, my colleague who just spoke talks about housing being a priority. Well, of course it's a priority. It's a priority for every American. So, look, that's why we work. That's why people go get jobs. They get jobs so that they can pay rent, so that they can pay mortgages. There are 10.5 million of those currently available. 10.5 million unfilled jobs right now. Nobody's denying housing to Americans. You have to work. You have to work for it. You have to get a job. You have to get an education and pay for rent, pay for housing. So this committee has already voted on its portion of the reconciliation bill. We had a spirited debate. Every Republican on this panel voted no. So why are we revisiting the issue? It's because the majority can't get their act together and communicate amongst themselves. The size of the package will need to shrink significantly to have any real chance of passing. This committee reported $325 billion in an ill-conceived housing spending. If the broader package, which included extreme liberal wish list items from across the spectrum, needs to shrink from $3.5 trillion to something substantially less, do we actually think there's room for $325 billion for taxpayer-funded housing, as opposed to housing that's actually financed through the efforts of individuals? I don't think so. I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record an October 20th Politico article entitled, quote, Democrats waste slashing $200 billion in housing aid from the spending bill, unquote. So look, so the housing funding will not be in the ultimate bill. What will be in the bill then? Well, let's review some of the things that are in this bill. My colleagues supposedly want to go after wealthy tax evaders and, quote, close the tax gap, unquote. Their solution is to turn banks into IRS agents. The administration and congressional Democrats are proposing to spy on the bank accounts of most American citizens. I take issue with this proposal for many reasons. First, it is a blatant invasion of privacy and would provide data to the IRS that it doesn't need and can't secure. Second, it places an undue burden on our financial institutions, especially small community banks and credit unions, who will be buried with implementation costs and ongoing compliance burdens. Finally, the proposal is based on the notion that every American is a tax cheat. That is so offensive. The administration and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle suggest that raising the threshold from $600 to $10,000 will somehow ensure that only the wealthy are captured. Well, let's remember, weekly inflows and outflows of just $200 for a year would get an account past the $10,000 threshold. This is not about millionaires and billionaires. It's about spying on you, the American people, anybody who has a job. As much as proponents of this proposal want to say it's about targeting rich tax cheats, it's clear all Americans are vulnerable to this surveillance state proposal. My colleagues also want to repeal the cap on state and local tax deduction. Well, this is a big win for blue states like New York, New Jersey, and California, but it's not going to do anything for working class Americans. Earlier this month, the Tax Foundation released a study that found a repeal of the SALT cap would disproportionately benefit the top 1% of earners, increasing their after-tax income by almost 3%. So which is it? Are we targeting the super rich so that they pay their fair share, or are we bailing out blue state billionaires? The answer seems clear. Our witnesses here today, they don't care about the SALT cap because they're not wealthy. I suggest we have a growing economy that allows people to have higher wages and upward mobility so that they can afford to pay their own rent for themselves and their own family. That's what we need. What else is in this bill? My colleagues are proposing to reverse the pro-growth corporate tax policy, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and enact a massive tax
Mr. Barr,
American
your
businesses.
time.